Hi, Dr. Lauren Kaczynski, and today is February 3rd. It's Saturday, it's 2024, and this is video number 7 in my 33-day video challenge for Metamorphosis medicine. And it's late. This day has been a little busy. And my recording setup isn't really amazing for doing a recording when I don't have daylight coming in through the window. But on another level, I decided I really want to get the video done today to meet my challenge, but also that the topic for today's video is a kind of darkness. And so something feels sort of right about being in the dark. I mentioned a couple of videos ago that when I got to New York, and even really on my way to New York with this plan that I had made and all these different pieces of my life in motion, that a lot of it fell apart. And what was interesting to me about that wasn't just that like one significant piece fell apart, but that other pieces did too. So the first thing that happened was that while I was walking the Camino and my condo had been put up for sale, it was a lakefront condo. It was a one bedroom. It was a small condo, but it had a 30-foot deck on the front and in a pretty great building and a good location. And when I got back, the realtor who had sold me the apartment, who is the realtor who had represented this building, hadn't shown it once. These were the first months of spring, and that's a time of year that usually everybody's starting to look at things. So I started to panic. And then I thought I'd better work with a different realtor. And she gave me advice about emptying my apartment out. And this by itself became a lesson because a lot of the people who would be moving to this place would be downsizing from a house and kind of in a retirement phase probably and wanting a little easier lakeside lifestyle. But they needed a way to imagine themselves into that space, and the staging was really important in an apartment this size because you had to see how you could conduct a life here. And I took everything out. I listened to what she said and I took everything out. The walls all got repainted white. Oh my God. That apartment didn't sell for like 10 months until I restaged it. And I didn't even have my great furniture then to do that. So that was the first thing that was problematic. The second thing I mentioned was that I planned on doing some locum tenens work to have some income during this year because I really didn't think I had the scholarly background in the subject that I was looking at to expect support from a leading institution in New York. And then I found out that even though I was fully credentialed as a general surgeon and taking general surgery call, my case numbers weren't sufficient to get credentialed with a locums agency. And the colorectal opportunities were few and far between. In fact, there was one that was listed but was taken as soon as I started to ask about it. It had already been filled. And that was the only one that I ended up seeing for like 2 or 3 years. So that wasn't going to work. And then when I got to New York, the two people that I'd made arrangements with, one, my mentor was away, and the chair of the department wasn't answering my calls. Now, I've thought a lot about what I would do about that now, but at the time, and this is sort of where I want to take you in this, because I think it's important to know this because it seems almost unsurvivable. I think so many pieces of my life were in motion. It was like being in a giant earthquake, and that I'm still trying to have presence of mind, and I do in a way. I still know myself in this space, but everything is moving, and I feel raw and exposed. And it's also been a humiliating year in a way to have even been in what felt like mud wrestling or something almost with the man that I worked for. to have that deterioration of a relationship that I had trusted professionally, I mean, it was a professional relationship, but I had trusted it. I wasn't sure what to think. And I think that set me up. That was so peculiar to me how that happened, that it set me up in a way to feel like anything was possible. And that I was less sure about being really demanding about getting the terms met that had been set before I arrived. So I think the sense was that, like, if my life had been a drawer that had been shaken up and everything had been emptied out. And I did come up with things to do, but the other element in this was that this relationship, well, one relationship had ended and then another one had started too soon. But it felt like a gift of this opening of the Camino and of this pilgrimage, and that there was something I was supposed to do. And in a weird way, I would say that that's true now, even though it ended up being quite painful and really cost me a lot. But the question on the table for me was that it was the first time in my life where I said, my work doesn't necessarily come first, because the formula that I had been living by had brought me to this place where things weren't making sense. And that it had cost me having kids. It had cost me, in some ways, being able to constitute a family life for myself. And so I had a lot more willingness to go into difficulty with that and to be destabilized in some sense by the choices I was making for my personal life. 5 years ago, I would have said that was crazy because of how the wheels came off in that. And again, how it distracted me in many ways, or left me without a kind of support and coherence, or that might have helped me to solve some of the problems with the rest of what was going on a little bit better. I think I'm just going to sit with this bit of darkness for this video, and then I'll start to talk about how I put things together. And I was just reading a novel, and the question for the characters in the novel is, so now what? And I'd had a big so now what leaving my academic job, and now what I had made for myself in my parachute seemed to be kind of coming apart. So now what? So maybe for you, you can think about for yourself what it would be like to have that kind of instability in so many areas, because it was really the house that I was living in, I changed, my job was gone, the new thing I was going to wasn't materializing properly, the new relationship that I was in, there was some deeply troubled things that were happening, but that I felt like I needed to address, not just in me, but in this other person, and decide. I was old enough to know that things are never perfect, and you always have to work on whatever it is that we're working on. It takes effort. So, and all of this happening on a foundation that had been shaken pretty substantially, even though I knew that I was employable and a good surgeon and a good doctor. So what would you do? What is your so now what in this scenario? And how might you find stable ground again? Where would you begin? It's worth mentally thinking about, because this sort of preparation is like the parachute a little bit. It says it's having a contingency plan, or it's at least investigating how many domains of life maybe can be unsettled at one time. And I'll see you in the next video.